Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would like to emphasize a couple of things first. Please silence all your cell phones. In an effort to have sufficient time to hear from audience members, we ask that when you come to the podium, please identify yourself and state your name and address. Limit your comments to 5 minutes and please ensure that you're delivering new testimony to the commissioners. At this time, we will approve the consent agenda. Denise, could you please read items 1 through 11?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 1, approval of the February 3rd, 2016 minutes of regular meeting. Item 2, February plats. Item 3, 4039-2016 rezoned from the RS Single Family Residential District to the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District for allowed forms located at the northeast of South Sherman Avenue and East 22nd Street. Item 4, 4173-2016 rezoned from the AG Agriculture District to the CN Conservation, C2 Commercial, Neighborhood and Streetcar, and I2 Heavy Industrial Districts for allowed forms located east of North Marion Road and north of I-90. Item 5, 4144-2016 rezoned from the AG Agriculture District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District for allowed forms located at 605 North La Mesa Avenue. Item 6, 4159-2016 rezoned from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density District for allowed forms located at 120 North Sycamore Avenue. Item 7, 4179-2016 rezoned from the I1 Light Industrial District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District for allowed forms at the northwest corner of North Terry Avenue and West Madison Street. Item 8, 4183-2016 rezoned from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and CN Conservation Districts to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and CN Conservation Districts for allowed forms located at the southwest corner of East 26th Street and South 6 Mile Road. Item 9, 4184-2016 rezoned from the I1 Light Industrial District to the C3 Commercial Community District located at 5100 West 12th Street. Item 10, 3679-2015 preliminary subdivision plan for Ackerson's Addition located east of South Minnesota Avenue and south of East 85th Street. Item 11, 4181-2016 initial development plan for the University Hills Village and pedestrian-oriented plan unit development located at the northwest corner of North Marion Road and West 60th Street North.
Does staff have any changes to the consent agenda? Are there any objections from the audiences on items 1 through 11 on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from the voting on this one.
Okay. Are there any objections from the commissioners on items 1 through 11 on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
We have a move to approve and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. If you are here for items 1 through 11, you are free to leave. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. I need a motion to approve the regular agenda in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Regular agenda passes.
Item 12, 4172, 2016, rezoned from the RR Rural Residential District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District for allowed forms located at 2809 South Jonathan Lane.
Jason Bieber representing the planning staff. This is an application by Russell Kalmus. It's located at 2809 South Jonathan Lane. The applicant is proposing to rezone this .80 acre parcel from the RR Single Family Residential Rural District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District. The existing .8 acre lot currently doesn't meet the minimum lot sizes of the rural residential district. The minimum lot size for that is 1 acre in size. Just a little history on the old Orchard Heights area. It was annexed into the city in 1978, and it consists of single-family homes on larger lots with increased setbacks. It was rezoned as part of the 1983 ordinance as the Old Orchard Heights Planned Development District. This planned development allowed single-family residentials with following setbacks and requirements. The required lot width was 80 feet. The required front yard was 30 feet, 15-foot side yards, 40 rear yards, and a maximum height of 35 feet. The proposed RS single-family suburban zoning district is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The existing lot does not meet the minimum 1 acre lot size within the rural residential zoning district. And we do have a little map here that shows that about 71 out of the 86 properties within the Old Orchard Heights area actually don't meet the 1 acre minimum requirements of the current zoning district. The applicant is intending on creating roughly 2 lots. And the west lot, they are looking at constructing a single family house and then possibly platting it down the middle and selling the right lot to a future person to construct a single family house. Staff, however, the required setbacks and minimal lot frontages of the RS zoning district are less than the setbacks and frontages of many existing homes within this neighborhood. Therefore, staff feels conditions as in increased setbacks and frontages should be added as part of this rezoning. Additional setbacks should help preserve the original intent of the Orchard Heights subdivision. If the rezoning of this property is approved with the recommended conditions, which I will go through here in a second, the applicant can split the lot and construct a single-family home with increased setbacks on the west lot and sell the east lot for a single-family home with increased setbacks. If the rezoning is denied, the parcel will continue to be zoned rural residential single-family and will not meet the minimum lot size to construct a single-family home, so therefore will remain vacant. Because the subject application is consistent with the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan and the increased setbacks and lot frontages should help preserve the existing neighborhood, staff does recommend approval of this rezoning with the following bulk regulation conditions. And these conditions will mirror the previous Orchard Heights Plan Development District under the old ordinance. We are requesting you to place the condition of an 80-foot lot width, a 30-foot required front yard on one of the streets, a 25 on the other street, a 15-foot side yard, a 40-foot rear yard, and a 30-foot maximum height. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair. Jason, can you put the slide that had the neighborhood with all the surrounding,
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. So can you explain the zoning around that lot?
All of those areas that are in yellow, with the hatches, without the hatches, are all zoned rural residential. So they all should have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. The specific lots that have the hashed lines through them are all lots that do not meet the minimum requirements. So therefore they should be RS zoning as well.
Were they just grandfathered in? Is that why they're still RR?
When
or-
shape places became effective, the closest zoning district to what the PD had was rural residential. I don't think it was taken into account that a lot of these lots don't meet that minimum lot size requirements, so.
Okay. So if they were to build a house on there now, that would be RS?
If to build a house on it now, it's zoned RR and we wouldn't issue them a building permit because
Okay.
it doesn't meet the minimum lot sizes.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Jason, just to clarify, when you were stating the bulk conditions, maximum height would be 35 feet. I thought I heard you say 30 feet.
35, which is technically the same as what it is in RS, so.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yep, 35, excuse me.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? And I just want to, I've heard it twice now, and I just want to clarify this. As of right now, you cannot build a house on this property because it doesn't meet requirements?
It's less than an acre, yep.
Okay. Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Could you please come forward? State your name and address, please.
Sam Bermudez, 5000 South MacArthur. I'm here on behalf of Russell. I'll be the general contractor for the home being built on that lot.
Any questions for Sam from staff or from the commissioners? Okay, thank you.
You bet, thank you.
Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this? Please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Carl Tonis. I'm at 2900 South Bell Pine Circle. I assume you've gotten my letter of opposition, and I won't rehearse that for you again here tonight. I just wanted to highlight some of the points. As you know, and I'm sure you know the ordinance better than I do, it says that the rural residential district is intended to protect existing rural residential homes that have been surrounded by new urban development and will be located where homeowners desire to maintain the rural infrastructure and character. And that's precisely what I'm here to advocate for tonight. In other words, compliance with that intent, compliance with that ordinance. The ordinance protects the current character of that neighborhood, and dividing this lot in half, in my mind, diminishes that character. This also constitutes, in my mind, as you've noticed from the staff recommendation, this parcel is entirely surrounded by rural residential designations. And so this is clearly, to me, a spot rezoning, which, as you know, is highly restricted and shall not generally be approved for the economic benefit of a single individual, which to me seems to be entirely what this situation is about this evening. Let me address the vacant lot issue, because it's not our intent, and when I say our, I mean myself and some of the other residents of the neighborhood who have also filed an opposition, as I understand. It is not our intent to render this lot useless or of little or no value or utility to the owner. I should be clear, the request to subdivide really has no bearing and nothing to do with building eligibility on this lot. This owner could just as easily request to rezone the lot as is, or could request a variance. And so this is not the only solution available to the applicant to render that lot with any worth or building eligibility. Furthermore, the owner knew or should have known what the zoning restrictions and the building restrictions were at the time the lot was purchased. Next, you may think that the difference between an RS and an RR designation is relatively minor, and it reflects the prevailing configuration of the neighborhood as it stands now. I would point out, though, that this chopping up lots in old orchards, it's a really bad precedent. And if you recall, and again, you know them better than I do, the rural residential designation, the minimum lot sizes in acres was discussed already. The minimum lot size in RS is 5,000 square feet. So in other words, you could squeeze almost 9 houses onto an acre. So it is highly dissimilar, regardless of what how the neighborhood may be configured at the moment. And I'm almost done because I'm trying to keep myself to 5 minutes. Regarding the issue of existing lots not meeting the 1 acre minimum, keep in mind that Shape Places was overlaid onto this neighborhood long after it's established and developed. And so to expect retroactive compliance really is not reasonable. And then finally, and this is sort of a subjective thing, I realize. There are many residents of that neighborhood who bought in that neighborhood because we enjoy the character of that neighborhood. This is not a situation where we moved in next to an empty cornfield and now we're annoyed at a commercial development in our backyards. This was an already established, already almost fully developed neighborhood under existing zoning. And so I think the residents have a right to expect some sort of stability in its character and not a subdivision of existing lots to the point where there's nothing distinctive or no distinctive character left in Old Orchard. 3 or 4 years from now, there are a lot of lots in that neighborhood that can be chopped up into little pieces and increase the housing density, and that is not the neighborhood that most of the residents expected to have when they bought their houses. So thank you very much for entertaining these comments, and I appreciate your time on this.
Excuse me. Does commissioners have any questions of Carl? Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience like to address this issue?
I'll get there. Mike Coulter, 2700 South Jonathan Lane. I'm on the corner of Old Orchard and Jonathan Lane. I have one of the smaller lots. I built the house in 1984. At the time, those lots were all plotted and covenanted at a minimum of 1/2 acre. So that is a reason why there's a lot of smaller acres up there. Now, what that has to do with the zoning and why they can't build on that lot right now, I'm not really clear on. There was a house there. There were two. The original farmhouse was torn down, another one was remodeled and put up, and then that was torn down. So why they can't just build on the 0.8, I really don't understand, even though, given that the way the houses were plotted when I built were minimum half acre. Also, when we came into the city, some of you may or may not know, there was a lot of argument and hassling going on with the residents that were there, wanting to maintain the rural character. We do not have sidewalks. We do not have curb and gutter. We do not have streetlights. Now, my question to you is if this is rezoned, would you require sidewalks, curb and gutter, and lights?
If you could, can I invite staff up to address this, please?
Go ahead.
We'll keep you up here, Mr. Coulter.
Go ahead, finish up.
No. That was my question. All the smart people are in Arizona, so they're not here tonight.
I'm glad he stepped up to the podium. Jeffrey Schmidt, representing the city planning office this evening, because he has some institutional knowledge that I think I just would like to expound upon before I answer the question about sidewalks. He mentioned that there was covenants on this property back before when he built his house at 1/2 acre. And so that's obviously why you look up there and you go, wow, look at all those that are less than an acre. When the city rezoned the property back with the previous zoning ordinance, we didn't have a standard at 1/2 acre. The only zoning district we had that kind of benchmarked it was the rural residential district that would allow for their rural character, and our standard was you had to be at an acre. Okay, so there's the disconnect when he just was saying, I don't know why there's this one, because that's the ordinance we had. You could either be RS, which then they would all have been upset about, or we went to rural residential, which said you had to be at an acre or above. So then when Shaped Places came in, we didn't change them. We didn't restrict them. We just said, we're going to convert you from what you were, rural residential, to Shaped Places rural residential. We kept the standards in place and said you still have to be at 1 acre. So I hope that explains that a little bit. You know, a way to correct this, which we don't necessarily have, but we could maybe spin it a little, is say, all right, let's make a zoning with conditions that says that this lot has to be at 1/2 acre or greater. Jason did that a little bit to help the neighbors and help this property owner with some bulk regulations, with some setbacks, but you may be able to address something like that, which would maybe address some of the neighborhood issues and concerns here. But again, just throwing that out. Now to answer the gentleman's question. We're looking at zoning this evening on whether or not it can be RS or remain as rural residential. You're not requiring them to put in sidewalks or streets or curbs and gutters. The Public Works Department is very aware of Orchard Heights and the requirements out here. They would, from a building code standpoint, they'd have to meet the grade elevations, the draining issues. They'd have to put in the right pipe sizes. They'd have to put in sanitary sewer. But in regards to the utilities along that street, they would not retroactively force this property owner to meet it just because the property got zoned.
Mr. Chair, one question for you, Jeff. I know there's been a lot of talk about a half acre, but a number of those lots are less than a half acre.
Correct. Again, that's why we didn't touch it when the previous gentleman that was up here was making the call between the previous zoning to shape places. We didn't change anything. We just moved it straight from the previous zoning of RR, which was a requirement of an acre, and we left it that way because it does start to open that Pandora's box and go, well, yeah, now if you made it a half an acre, you still have made some of them non-conforming. Just saying on this one property, would you help alleviate some of the neighbors' concerns? Some, but not all. It's always an issue. But that's the disconnect on the 1 acre size versus the half acre size. And that's why, again, I wanted to jump up here with the gentleman that had a lot of more historic knowledge. That was the first time I'd really heard the half acre covenant. So thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, the earlier testimony we heard was about an option for a variance to be able to still build if this stayed in RR. Could you address that as well, Jeff?
Yes, and a lot of you have experience in the Board of Adjustment, and staff has experience with the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment's a different board than you. It's a legal board set up by the state of South Dakota that can only grant variances based upon hardships on a lot that is different than any other lot. Okay, so I can't stand up here and rule and say, well, obviously they're going to get the variance or obviously they're not going to get the variance. They would have to plead their case and say, this lot is different than any other lot, and therefore you have to give me a variance because I have a hardship. Jeff Schmidt's not on that board. I'm looking up there and they're going to see this exhibit and go, you don't seem to have a hardship because everybody else has a smaller lot, and it seems like it's a tough thing to give, which is I'm sure why they decide to pay us $550 to rezone it versus a Board of Adjustment's only $75.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any more questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
if I might.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Jeff, some of these lots are bigger than the half acres. The map you had on before showed the square footage. By zoning this RS, would this be for this piece of property only, or are we talking the whole neighborhood?
Just this property, the one highlighted in red there, and per your zoning exhibit. Sorry, Jason. This is all we're talking about. On the left, it's zoned RR, and they're requesting on the right to zone it to RS. That's all they're talking about, one property.
Setting a precedent, Jeff, on taking, let's say there was one there that had about 60,000 square feet. These will end up to being about 15,000. Are we opening a door there, and might be good, might be bad, if somebody with a bigger piece of ground coming in and going, hey, zone mine RS.
Right.
I want to put 4 lots in there.
Right.
And we go, well, we're not sure we want to do that, and, well, we just did it over here.
Correct. So that's where you're having the discussion tonight with these property owners to go, well, what's really the requirement? What are your issues and concerns? You know, is it, and I don't want to get too far into the technology, the technical aspect, the bulk regulations. Jason's already required on this one that they have to have certain setbacks. So is it the setbacks or is it the lot size? So if you wanted to throw in a different bulk regulation about a standard lot size, you would help with a little bit about that, but you wouldn't address everybody's concern. So that's one solution that you may look at, or you could just say, you know what, I mean, this property owner's not going to get 4 9.
No, I'm not
I
thinking
know.
of this fella.
Right,
Thinking
so.
of the fella down the block or something
Correct.
like that.
That's what you have to think about on this one as well as the next one that comes in. Would it set a precedent? You guys would have to make those decisions on each one when it came in, as well as every property that's out there. What's really the intent for this neighborhood? And
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, it really plays off what Ken just said, but can you address the concern that on the first testimony about the spot, having an RS in middle of the RRs?
yes, we did address that with our our current zoning ordinance shaped places and said, in the ordinance, we've listed it so people can look at it at home when I know they're all, using their technology. Spot zoning is not illegal and it's allowed within the zoning laws. Spot zoning is only illegal if you discriminate. So if you're going to allow this applicant to do it, but the next one that comes in, you say, we can't do it because it's a spot zone, that's illegal. That's discrimination. But if anybody can come in and has the same right to do it, then it's not discrimination, it's not illegal. The intent in the jurisdictional laws and spot zoning is that you allow it for one person, but not for everybody. So again, from a planning standpoint, and especially for this board, you guys never do that. You never just go, hey, yeah, but let's look at the price point or let's look at the applicant, then we'll decide. You've always made the decision based upon the legal standing of, it's just a zoning decision. And that's why we changed the law and said spot zoning's not illegal because you're just going to look at it from a whole heart.
Thank you.
Any other questions, staff? Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Coulter, did you have any more? Okay. No. All right, thank you. Anyone else from the audience like to speak?
Thank you, gentlemen, for inviting us to this. I'm Dr. Unruh. We own the lot, 2 acres, right across the street from this lot. 1980 is when we built it. We've got a couple of horses. We had a covenant with the city to allow horses. Sioux Falls is still a one-horse town. We got the horse yet. And it's a unique part of Sioux Falls. In fact, the lot we're talking about is the original homestead in Orchard Heights. It was called the Apple Orchard, and my wife was president of the orchard at one time, and we'd plant apple trees every year and make the beauty of the area conducive to the type of atmosphere that we all wanted. And this is a unique part of the orchard where all these houses that are built around it, and to divide this into 2 lots, we have no opposition to building a nice home on that lot. We just want you to know that. And we wouldn't have any difference in changing in variance from 1 acre, where it's 0.8 acres, to build 1 house on that lot. But to divide it into 2 lots, to build 2 houses next door to each other, would really greatly change the character of that lot. And they'd have to remove a lot of the big pine trees that are there that beautify the area. They could completely change the character, the traffic. We've got a mailbox that's built just like our home. They'd put another mailbox right beside ours that would not be the same type of facility. And so that's part of a major concern that we have, and we feel dividing this into 2 small lots to build 2 homes is basically just for economic reasons of the realtor. Dan and Billy Stuford couldn't be here tonight. They're neighbors of ours. He gave a presentation for me to share his concerns. He says the 3 areas that he's concerned about is these 2 lots would be 12 to 20% smaller than almost all the surrounding lots between Cortland Avenue on the east and Southeastern Avenue on the west, between Old Orchard Trail and 1 block south of Jonathan Lane. This would be a further departure from the concessions that have made this neighborhood over the last 2 decades, and a considerable departure from the original intent of the neighborhood. Page 7 of the exhibits. This lot is surrounded by streets on 3 sides. All homes along these streets enjoy a line of sight that is well aligned with the original intent of the community. Splitting that into 2 lots, each with a home instead of 1 home, with appropriate setbacks, will remove this essential feature enjoyed by other residents in close proximity. In addition to the lost line of sight to accommodate the 2 homes on the proposed split lot, the neighborhood would experience a substantial loss of many trees that are an integral component of the atmosphere of Old Orchard Trail. We're eager to welcome a new home into our area, but we feel splitting this lot even further would really greatly be a detriment to all the neighborhood and the traffic and the aesthetics of what this whole Orchard Heights was designed to look like. So those are our major concerns.
Any questions for Mr. Unruh?
Let me ask you, if we own those 2 acres, if this concession's made, I could divide my 2 acres into 6 lots and sell them. I mean, what would prevent that from happening? And then we're back into a precedent where I'd say discrimination. You know, I mean, I don't want, we'd like to keep this area the way it was designed as the one part of Sioux Falls that's kind of the country and the city. That's what people really like about that area. They go for walks, and we got the horses, and it's kind of a country atmosphere with a minimum of 1/2 acres on all the other lots. So that's our concern. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience who'd like to speak on this issue?
My name is GaN Scott. I live at 3120 East Old Orchard Trail. There's one house between this property and our property. We're to the north. First, today is Dr. Seuss's birthday, and I want to call attention to one of the quotes that come from that man. He said, "Unless somebody cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better." It's not. And you have people living in Orchard Heights who care a whole awful lot about what we have created and what we have maintained today. We moved in 1973, and we've been there ever since. We were there when the city needed to annex the property. That caused a lot of stress among a great many people. One of the things the city did, I think, was very smart, is they got everyone affected together and held a meeting and talked about the problem, found ways to address people's questions and concerns. At that time, the Orchard Heights group also executed an agreement with the city. And I scrambled around to find that today, this afternoon, and I wasn't able to put my hands on it. But there is an agreement that exists between the Orchard Heights organization and the City of Sioux Falls. And I think that needs to be looked at. I don't know if this conforms to that or not, but I think that needs to be examined before anything is done with this. And I would recommend one other thing. Since the pattern has been set of getting folks together and talking things through and developing solutions to problems, I guess I would recommend that you don't reject this or accept it. I think you might just defer it until people can get together with the builder and the folks that live in the orchard to see what can be done to work out a solution for what he's trying to accomplish and what the orchard really means to an awful lot of people. People who care a whole awful lot. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Scott? Thank you.
Okay.
And I have one more. 2 more. Is there any new testimony?
My name's Kevin Meester, and I live at 2812 South Jonathan Lane. It's just to the south of that lot right there, and I've lived there since 2000. Basically, like everybody else has been saying, you know, we moved up there for the reason of the peace and quiet, the darkness, no sidewalks. more of the rural setting. Now, there have been lots of homes that have been built up there since we've moved in 2000. Just huge, humongous houses, but they've always been built on big lots. And we're not opposed to them building a house across the street from us. I mean, we knew that was going to happen. Just splitting that lot in half and putting a 6,000 square foot house and taking out the majority of the trees that surround that block. It's like a half a block, basically. That's what we're opposed to. You know, we knew, you know, we're up to having somebody build a house, a nice house over there. We just don't want somebody building a 6,000 square foot house and having it jammed in one side of that lot. You know, and taking out all those trees. There's so many developments in Sioux Falls that expensive homes that are, you know, put in side by side by side. And I don't know if that's what they were planning. I don't know why they wanted to build an old orchard if they want to split that lot up. If they don't want to split the lot up, that's fine. We're up for that. So we knew it was going to happen. You know, we welcome that, but we just don't want the trees out and just jammed in there, basically. So.
All right, any questions for Mr. Meester? Thank you.
You bet.
Any new testimony? Anybody else? Please come forward. No, come on, ma'am.
I'm Leslie Unruh, and I live directly across the street. Alan already spoke, my husband. I have been the Orchard Heights Shanny Kincaid, which is the Shanny Kincaid property that we were talking about, and is the original homestead, and done the archives for the orchard for many, many years. And we do welcome a home. We would love to welcome people and bring them the Orchard Heights little apples that we do and everything. But so many of the people have been coming by since the sign went up and are a little intimidated to come and speak to all of you, but really are concerned. And again, said, would there be a way that we could put the old association back together again and we can all talk and see what we can do to make this be a win-win for everybody. We don't want to be difficult. We want to make this be a win-win. So I just want you to know I had probably 20 different people contact me over the last week or so, and I was out of town, or I would have put together a meeting sooner with them, and they're very concerned. So if we could get a time, we could chat more. Lots of questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Any questions for Mrs. Unruh? Thank you.
Yes.
This gentleman here was, and then you can come up after that, sir.
Thank you. My name is John Eagan. I am the listing broker on that property, and also used to live across the street from that property, so I know that area real well. I've sold that property twice. You know, if you look at that property from the south part of that property, the two houses that are to the north of this property are very similar as how they want to split this lot up. And I talked to these guys, and they want to put two houses on there. And I think if you look at the size lot that they're dealing with, it'll accommodate two houses on there. Fine. I got a call yesterday, though I think where some confusion might have came up, was I got a call personally, and someone said, I didn't know they were putting 5 houses on there. I said, where'd you hear that from? He said, well, one of the neighbors called me and said, they're putting 5 houses on there. I says, absolutely not. That's not what's going on up there. So I went around and put the plot to what they're doing in the doors so people didn't misunderstand. Somebody was telling the neighbors, or one of the neighbors was confused or had gotten wrong information. I'm not sure what it was. And we all know that happens occasionally. But you know, I just wanted to reiterate that if you look at that, because I know those houses very well, and I know most of these people up here live up there, and I understand their concern. They've lived up there a long time. You know, that lot's been there a long time, and it's nice to see the deer on there. And I live 2 blocks from there, so I know the area as well as anybody. But you know, I think the reasoning that they're trying to split it up is to get 2 houses on there. And I don't think that's a problem on that lot. You guys look at the square footage on there. It's not a problem. I mean, I think it's more beneficial than putting a 12,000 square foot house on there and encompassing, you know, that whole lot, which somebody could put a monster house on that lot. And they're doing it up there. But I think look at that, look right directly to the north. There's 2 houses on those lots, one on each one, and they mirrored this lot right here. And so I really don't see, you know, I understand. I think there was some confusion out there because I got the call. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, someone had told them, they called the city and said they were going to do up to 5 houses or something. And, you know, I don't blame them for being upset about that. But I just wanted to just say, I think 2 houses is a good fit up there. If you've driven around there, it's plenty of room. I mean, I know there's a lot of trees on there. A lot of them are on the outside of that lot. So there'll be a couple that will have to be probably moved. You can move some of them too. But that's my point. Like I said, I've known that area well, so I understand some of the concerns because there is changes going on up there. But, you know, when you own a piece of property and somebody wants to sell it, I mean, they got to have a certain point where they can sell it too. So, and I think the values will hold very steady with what they're planning on doing. It's not going to hurt their values. So, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Eagan from the commissioners first, please, sir?
Mr. Chair, when I look at this overhead picture, is that an existing house on the east side of this lot?
No, that's the garage.
That is a garage.
Yeah,
period.
there was a garage that was originally there, and they left it when they tore down the old house.
Okay.
That's the driveway came in. There used to be a pool that was right to the west of there, and then the main house that was on there. But like I said, if you look at that, those 2 houses that are right above it are exactly how that could sit in there to a certain extent. So, I mean, you're not going to change that lot look at all. I mean, there'll be a few trees, I understand, but most of those trees are on the outside, and that's the reason they bought that lot. It's because the trees, they want the trees. So they are planning on keeping it looking good, so.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, John.
Hi, my name is Nathan Shima, and I have obviously not lived in Old Orchard since 1975 or whatever the case may be. I'm probably the newest member. I'm at 2804 South Jonathan Lane. Despite what Mr. Eagan just said there, I think if you're putting a 6,000 square foot home and splitting that lot, I think it does set a very dangerous precedent. Yes, there are trees all the way around that lot, and if you're talking about setbacks and whatnot, you're going to be knocking down a lot of trees. My wife and I decided to buy a home in this neighborhood simply because, you know, again, it's the country and the city, and it has such a remarkable feel. If you're in your backyard having a fire, you don't know where you are. It is pitch black, and I think that is something to be said for, and I would hate to think that, you know, this old boy from a farm country in Minnesota is going to have to look at other options because of the precedent we're setting here. And I think Alan mentioned it earlier. He's got all that land over there, and so obviously, if this were to go through and continues to go through, I would expect the same things to continue happening. So the whole character of this neighborhood is inevitably going to change. So I just wanted to make sure and put those comments in there for us young families as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Nathan? Thank you. Anyone else from the audience with some new testimony? I'll look for commission action on item number 12.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve for discussion.
I'll second that.
With the required setbacks as laid out?
Yeah, is this with the required stipulations and setbacks? Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to, in looking at the surrounding area that's kind of in that rural residential, there's one lot that's 16,831 feet. I think that was the smallest one out there, so I would make an amendment to add a stipulation that the minimum lot size be 17,000 square feet. Hearing from the neighbors, I think they were concerned about lot size being one of the bigger issues, and if, you know, we keep it no smaller than what's currently there, that seems to be reasonable.
Any other discussion?
Probably need a second to
We're
the.
going to need a second on that amendment. To add that stipulation.
Mr. Chair, this is, I can see both sides of this story. This is a very, very sensitive area up in that part of town. I think my biggest concern, and yet it doesn't seem unreasonable to split this lot and put two houses there. If I have a concern, it's probably the precedent that we would set with that. I realize every deal's different. And I'm not going to pick on Dr. Unruh, but he does have 2 acres. He could tentatively get 5 lots out of there, which could certainly change. And there's other pieces of property there the same thing could happen to. And I think that starts to take away from the vision and the thought of this particular area. I don't know what 17,000 square feet does to this particular situation. Does it allow 2 houses to be built there, or?
I mean, if it's 35,000 square feet, it probably does.
I think the lots at 0.4 acres would be 17,500 square feet each, according to the
Would be
write-up.
enough room to still be able to do that at 17.5?
Mm-hmm.
I'd feel a lot better supporting it if we had some neighborhood support, but I haven't seen any neighborhood support at this particular point in time. I'm just sitting here wondering if a neighborhood meeting could help or hurt. I think Mr. Don Scott was very articulate when he talked about maybe it might be just a time, take a pause, show us exactly what you want to do here. What are you going to move out? How's this going to look when it's done? But that's just my 2 cents.
Chair, I seconded the amendment motion so we could discuss that, and I'm still uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable in a lot of different areas about this. It seems like it's a classic example of homeowners at odds with development again, and we see that a lot here. But in this particular case, I think, am I on? Hello?
Yeah.
There we go. In this particular case, I'm almost of the mind to reject the motion to amend, even though I seconded it, and come up with a different idea that I would bring forth to defer. But we've got a motion. We have to vote on his first, and we'll talk about that if that passes or fails.
Mr. Chair, I need some help here if you could. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. How much square footage is that saying?
35,000.
35,000. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if they're interested, they could make a substitute motion to defer, and that would supersede that amendment.
Oversee this one.
Even the amendment?
Yep.
Just want to double check that with the attorney.
I would so move the substitute motion to defer to the next general meeting. And as was suggested by one of the presenters or the speakers tonight, to give us all the time to kind of delve into this. I don't want to make a decision until I know personally that it's fairly much the right decision, and I don't have that confidence tonight. So my motion to defer is a substitute motion.
If I may, sorry, to when?
The next general meeting.
Okay.
Second.
I'm going to need help on this when we get done.
Okay, you have the motion, you have the second to defer it to the next meeting. So now, unless there's additional discussion, they would vote on the matter.
Vote on my motion to defer.
On the substitute motion.
Any other discussion on this?
Mr. Chair, one comment maybe in opposition to the 2 guys sitting around me, but we do have individual property rights. You know, that's one of the hallmarks of being a U.S. citizen. And so I guess I think we have enough information to take action on it tonight.
Any other discussion on this?
Mr. Chair, I guess I concur with Denny in that we would encourage, first of all, it takes a lot of courage for neighbors to come forward, and we appreciate your passion for your neighborhood. We wish every neighborhood in Sioux Falls would have the same amount of passion as you do. We would have we already have an outstanding city. We'd have a really outstanding city if everybody felt as passionate about their neighborhood as you do. But I think what Denny and Ken are suggesting is for the developer to have a neighborhood meeting with the neighbors to further vet the development of these two lots. Is that correct, Denny and Ken? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, can I have staff come up and answer a question for me too?
Yes. Staff?
We're looking at in essence, the rezoning of this property that does single family fit in next to rural residential, correct?
Yes, and that's something I think we're losing focus on. The applicant has shown us that that's what he's planning on doing, is constructing a house on the west lot and selling the east lot. If he would come forward with us tonight and showing him constructing a house in the middle, and then several of the neighbors have said that that's fine. I think maybe we're focusing a little bit too much on him platting the lot, because he wouldn't have to tell us that he wasn't platting the lot. I mean,
that may happen or it may not happen.
Correct. I mean, he's been up front. He's showing us he's platting the lot, but he could have shown us, hey, I want to rezone this and put a house in the middle and get it rezoned and then plat it. I mean, he could do that. And so I think maybe we're focusing a little bit too much on the plat, and we need to focus on if a house should be built here, I guess. I mean, should it be zoned single family to build a house, or should it stay rural residential and remain vacant?
Thank you.
Not, Mr. Chair, to Denny and Ken's concerns, I mean, there is a lot of neighborhood anti-support, we'll call it. If we defer this and a meeting occurs, what are they going to discuss? I've heard some pretty stout opinions that there's no interest in anything being put on this lot. And I do feel there is some rights of the property owner. Right now they're being held hostage. They can't do anything with this due to the transition of what it was, then to Shape Places, remaining rural residential. It doesn't qualify for building because it's not big enough.
Am I
And if this
mistaken?
were to, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Am I mistaken? They cannot build a house there,
Correct.
as we said? I think what we're talking about is two houses with the rezone. Is that not correct?
Just talking about a rezone.
You could put two houses there.
You could put two houses there.
You know,
If I might, Mr. Chair, to Mr., what you're suggesting is that we don't pass the motion to defer, and then we run the risk, for those of you who may be supporting this, of it failing. Because we'd have to vote on the essential original motion then. I think it's more prudent to take a step at a time and see if there's some common ground that can be had by the opposing parties. That's all I'm saying. We've got plenty of time to vote this up or down a month from now.
Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I need all in favor of the motion to defer it, signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign.
Yes.
yes.
I think we're going to have to do this. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes to defer till next month. Item number 13.
4130, 2016, conditional use permit in the RE3 form to allow an on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment with 500 feet of a sensitive land use located at 2300 South Minnesota Avenue.
Staff, for item 13, please.
Sorry about that. This is a conditional use permit by Cole Ben in the RE3 form to allow an on-sale alcohol beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive land use. It is located at 2300 South Minnesota Avenue. The aerial here shows the previous Burger King. That site has been redeveloped with a new multi-tenant center, which has a DeMarcus Noodles along with a new Caribou Coffee. The proposed on-sale alcohol beverage establishment, and that's for the DeMarcus Noodles on the south side of this, it does meet the criteria of the comprehensive plan. This is an existing arterial corridor with commercial uses. Several restaurants do have accessory alcohol along South Minnesota Avenue. The beer and wine purchases will be a small amount of the restaurant's overall sales. It'll function similar if you guys have ever been to a Noodles and Company. They have small amounts of beer and wine that you can purchase. And they will also have to provide a security management plan as part of their alcohol license. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff recommends approval of this conditional use permit, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jason, I do have a question. It says proximity to parks, open spaces, and schools. First is, I'm going to be a little technical on this because there is no Mark Twain School anymore. It's Susan B. Anthony, but that's minor. That's minor.
It still
the
says
other
that
is,
on our GIS, so
yep.
That's what I was thinking.
Anthony. The other
Okay.
isn't right across the street the first Sioux Falls Lutheran School?
I think that's down farther on 30, isn't that by Hy-Vee on 37th?
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be 32nd.
32nd.
Yeah, so that's 5 blocks
They have
away.
about the same
so, yep.
distance for both of
Yep,
them.
and as you know, the Hy-Vee actually has an on-sale alcohol license too,
Right.
so for their restaurant plus their banquet rooms, I believe, or their training room. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Jason? Is petitioner here? Please come forward, state your name and address.
I'm Cole Benny, and 2300 South Minnesota is our address. And our sales are less than 1% for alcohol, so our beer and wine. So it's not much at all. It's pretty much for franchise, requires us to have it, and so it's nothing very big.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address this? Any questions from the commissioners? I look for commission action on item number 13.
Motion to approve item 13.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Item 14, 4137, 2016, conditional use permit in the RE form to allow an on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment with 500 feet of a sensitive land use located at 1912 West 41st Street, Suite A.
The applicant here is Brian Soberg. It's located at 1912 West 41st Street, just west of the existing Qdoba in the building that previously had, I believe, Ernie November. There currently exists a casino within the building. The applicant is proposing to remodel a roughly 1,200 square foot space, tenant space, to construct a second casino within the building that will have all the required separation from the existing casino. The proposed on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment does meet the criteria of the comprehensive plan. This is an existing arterial corridor with commercial uses. There has been an existing casino lounge on this property for some time. The applicant is proposing to keep this and then just construct a second location within the building. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff recommends approval of this conditional use. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff? Thank you. Is the petitioner here?
Hi, I'm Brian Soberg, 330 North Main.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone in the audience like to speak on this item? Well, no questions. I look for commission on item number 14.
Move to approve item number 14.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion passes.
Item 15, 4148-2016, conditional use permit in the RE3 form to allow an on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment with 500 feet of a sensitive land use located at 5115 East Arrowhead Parkway.
This is another application by Bryant Soberg. This is a site out there in Arrowhead Parkway. We've seen this quite a bit in the last year or two with the rezoning and then the redevelopment of this site with the grocery store that's going in there, along with another couple buildings. So the applicant is proposing to eliminate the existing casino that you can see up there in the northeast corner of the property and then construct a new building in the south portion of the property, kind of adjacent to that detention pond, with, I believe that they are going to have 2 casinos within that building. The submitted site plan does indicate the required 10-foot front yard setbacks. They are required to have 18 parking spaces for that multi-tenant building. They are showing 19. And they will have to provide that level C buffer yard on that south property line, which includes a 20-foot setback, a 4-foot fence and 2-foot berm, and 40 units of landscaping along that south property line to buffer from the adjacent single-family neighbor there. The proposed on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment does meet the criteria of the comprehensive plan. This arterial corridor has existing commercial land uses. There has been a casino lounge on this property for some time. It's been in that northeast corner adjacent to Foss Avenue. And then the required level C buffer yard should provide the necessary buffering and transition to the single family uses to the south. Because this application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions of staff? Thank you, Jason. Petitioner, come over.
Brian Soberg, 330 North Main.
Looks like the casino business is doing good. Any questions of Brian?
Brian, can you tell us more than you told us last time?
No, I don't think so. Not without a question.
I'm joking.
Thank you.
All
right. Any question, or is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Okay, any questions from the commissioners? No? I look for commission action on, I think I did this twice, on item number 14.
15.
We're on 15.
We're on 15.
We're on 15.
15, that's what I said. On item number 15.
Move to approve item 15 for discussion.
Second.
Change it up a bit.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Item 16, 4150-2016, conditional use permit in the DD3 form to allow a family daycare located at 732 West 8th Street.
Good evening, Diane DeCoyer with planning staff. The applicant for this project is Lucille Frazier, requesting the conditional use for a family daycare. She was unable to acquire the 75% of the neighbor signatures within 250 feet, which is why she's here for a conditional use permit. She stated that many of the neighbors were probably out for the winter months, and she wasn't getting any return calls or communication back from them. The property is located at 732 West 8th Street, which is northeast of West 8th and North Prairie Avenue. The applicant is proposing an accessory use family daycare in their home. The application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the following stipulations. Excuse me. Number one, they're required to have an adequate outdoor play area protected by a 4-foot barrier, such as a fence, wall, berm, or hedge. And second stipulation is the zoning permit shall state that a health department license is required before the beginning of operation. I can take any questions you might have.
Commissioners, you have any questions?
Mr. Chair? Dan, just one. Is the health department license required anyway?
Yes.
Even without stipulating, it'd be something they would have to do?
The conditional use for a family daycare does indicate that they have to have that license in place before the operation of the facility.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Diane.
And a conditional use does travel with the owner or stays on the site?
Stays on the site.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yes.
Unless there's a stipulation stating that it's for this owner occupant only, correct?
Yes, because it is a family daycare for this location. And the license is for this location.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Oh, wait.
Diane, question? And maybe I missed it, but what are the age groups of the children who will be here, or be there?
Under 14 years of age.
Okay. Are you at all concerned by the fact that you might have some toddlers running around out there, and if they so choose, they can just have a berm and not a fence?
They should have a fence, but we cannot put that stipulation on it. I talked to somebody with the health department specifically for that. That is something that they enforce. That is not something that we enforce as part of the conditional use permit.
In our purview to do that.
Right.
Okay.
But it is. The standards for the conditional use for a daycare are the health and safety of the child is the utmost importance. That's the standard. So you either grant a conditional use or you don't grant a conditional use. If you think, I mean, again, not this home because they'll look at the child care center, you're looking at the land use. If you think that this is a bad location because of the health and safety, you say no.
Gotcha.
So yes and no.
So just that detail of we are not telling the applicant that they have to have a fence, but yes, we are looking at it in terms of the health and safety of the children, which is why the conditional use permit's required.
Of health.
Pardon me?
That issue could be settled by the Department of Health.
Right.
Rather than us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have required fences on things other than daycares before, correct? As part of a conditional use permit?
Like it says, there's a 4-foot fence requirement, a berm or a hedge. And again, for the safety of the children, you would think that the fence should be enforced in this case. They did ask about getting a fence permit when they came in for this application. And I think their intention is to follow up with zoning for that fence permit. And I'm sure the applicant can provide more detail to that answer.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is the applicant?
Diane, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Diane? As a conditional use, if there was concern about this staying with the property, could we not make a stipulation that it be for this particular owner only?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
For a
I missed some of
conditional
that.
use application, if there was some concern about does it stay with the person or stay with the property, could we not put a stipulation in there that it be for this petitioner only?
I'm going to throw both people under the bus, Diane and Danny, on this one. We don't do that anymore. Okay, we have historically, with your 10 years of experience, we have specifically with liquor licenses, we've said for this applicant only. But we're not a licensing board, you're a land use board, and you're not looking at the applicant So when this applicant gets up here, you're not judging them. The health department does. You're looking at, is this a good property, depending on whoever runs it. So we're not looking at for this person only anymore.
Okay,
so that's how we've tried to really address it on all these conditional uses, really since, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years. But you're correct. We used to do that every now and then. They're like, boy, we're struggling, so let's do it for the applicant only. We're like, yeah, that's a licensing thing.
But under the new ordinance, with zoning issues, we are allowed to put stipulations on zoning ordinance now. Before we weren't allowed, I believe.
Yeah, yes, this is a conditional use, and you can put a condition on this, yes. Yep.
Any more questions, staff? Is petitioner available?
Yes, we have already spoken on the subject of a fence, and we are going to put one as soon as the ground thaws. And I will not take toddlers outside where they could run in the street. I've done daycare for over 30 years. I know better than that.
All right, any other questions from the commissioners then on this? Sounds like she answered our questions very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the audience that would like to address this?
My name is Margaret Barnett. We live a block away on 9th and Prairie. And the group business doesn't bother us. It's the traffic. 8th and Prairie is a very busy intersection. The buses run on 8th Street. Prairie and 8th are both zoned 1 for snow removal, so you know they're busy. It'd be very difficult to pick up children there and drop them off, we feel. We need daycares, I understand that, but our concern is for the safety of the children. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Barnett? Thank you. Anyone else from the audience like to address this?
I would like to say one more thing. 8th and Prairie, 8th is always empty. There are rarely cars even parked on 8th. That's where parents would be dropping off. I mean, on Prairie, I'm sorry, on Prairie. They would be dropping off on Prairie. There are rarely any, there's no congestion, nothing on Prairie. So that is where we'd have the children dropped off.
Thank you.
One more quick question of her. One more. I'm sorry to make you stick around. I'm sure that before you decide to do this, you looked into the potential for taking care of children in the surrounding area. Is there a pretty good need for that from young families that need to have daycare?
I could only assume so because it's so close to downtown. So I can only assume there is a big need for daycare in that area.
You didn't go out and do any surveying or anything like that ahead of time to determine that?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
Good evening. Douglas Bird, 400 North Duluth. Just two quick things. Yes, I agree with Mrs. Barnett. Child safety is our biggest fear. We did have a neighborhood meeting last week. I think it would have been great if we could have had some communication on this at that time. We probably would have had more people in favor of it or against it. I don't know. But that would have been a good opportunity. I think that was brought up in another discussion, is getting people together. And lastly, my only other point would be, if I recall, the last time I looked at a sex offender registry list, just a couple blocks south of there, it's out of our Cathedral Historic District, but it's across 11th Street. there was a whole host of registered sex offenders over there. So if there could be some kind of a safeguard, or I don't know what else other than common sense on for safety of the children. That's all I had.
Any questions? Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please come.
The parent will pull up, get out of the vehicle with their child, bring their child to my door. The child will come in. When we go outside, I will never send a child out alone, ever. There is no chance of any sex offender getting anywhere near any child. And I never leave my daycare, ever. So when the parent picks up, they will come to the door. I'll give them their child. They're not going to come in contact with anyone else.
Any questions? Thank you. I look for commission action on this item.
Move to approve with the 2 stipulations as listed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would pity the fool that tried to mess with Mrs. Fraser's kids there.
Yep.
Pity the fool that tried to mess with the kids there.
Well said, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, the discussion's ended. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Item 16 passes.
Item 17, 3923-2015, alternative site plan for an alternative landscape plan to allow the required front yard trees outside the front yard setback located at the northeast corner of East 57th Street and South Hosta Avenue.
This is an application by Clint Ackerman. It's located at the northeast corner of 57th and South Hosta Avenue. The applicant is requesting to place the required front yard trees along 57th Street outside of the front yard setback. This site is required to have 1 tree for every 50 feet of frontage for a total of 11 trees. These trees are required to be placed in the front yard setback along Hosta Avenue and East 57th Street. The applicant is proposing to place 14 trees along South Hosta Avenue and East 57th Street. However, there's a 60-foot drainage and storm sewer easement, as you can kind of see on the south side of this site plan with the hatch lines along 57th Street. Therefore, the applicant is proposing to push the trees to the north just outside of that easement, but in front of the proposed parking lot. The applicant is proposing to place these trees within the front yard along East 57th Street, but not the front yard setback. If this application is approved, the applicant can place the required front yard trees outside the setback and in the location indicated on this submitted landscape plan. If the application is denied, the applicant would most likely have to cluster all of their trees along South Hosta Avenue, which might not be good for them or the site in general. Because the subject application should meet the intent of the front yard landscaping requirements within the shape, place, and zoning ordinance, staff does recommend approval of this specific application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the commissioners for staff? Thank you, Jason. Would the petitioner come forward, please?
Doesn't look like he is here tonight.
All right. Anyone from the audience want to address this? No discussion. Look for commission action on item number 17.
Mr. Chair, with the applicant not being here, I would move to defer to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Do I have motion to defer and second? Any discussion?
I have a hard time approving it without the applicant here.
Or slamming it down. Yeah.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to defer this till when, Mr. Sershin?
The next meeting.
Till the next meeting. All in favor of deferring till the next meeting, item 17, signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Item 17 deferred.
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself from number 18 as well.
Okay, thank you.
Item 18, 4128-2016 preliminary subdivision plan for Foundation Park addition located east of North Marion Road and north of I-90.
The applicant here is Paul Korn with Sayre Associates. The owner is the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. It's roughly 422 acres that they are looking at subdividing. This subject property was annexed in February of this year in 2016, and you guys did approve the rezoning application that was on the consent agenda at the beginning of this meeting. At the time of this report and at the time of us sending out packets to the Planning Commission, we did have several tasks left in Sayre for them to complete or address. However, as of today, this preliminary subdivision plan has been accepted in Sayre, so all their tasks are completed. They've answered all the questions that engineering had of them. So therefore, we are changing our recommendation from deferral to approval for this specific preliminary subdivision plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the commissioner of staff? Seeing none, thank you, Jason. Would the petitioner come forward, please?
Good evening. I'm Slater Barr with the Sioux Falls Development Foundation.
Any questions of the petitioner on this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Easy.
Need a motion on item 17?
Move to approve.
Pardon me?
Audience.
Did you
Oh,
want?
audience. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this? Thank you.
There you go.
Now seeing none, I need a
Motion for
I believe it's 18.
item 18, yes.
You said 17.
Okay.
You've had a good night.
Item 18.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, the same sign. Item 18 passes.
Item 19, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls.
Good evening. This item was before you last month, and when it was going to City Council, we deferred it a month to come back to Planning Commission and just address a couple of issues. It's the same ordinance that we had in front of you last month, but we changed basically some of the semantics in the ordinances itself. It said section 620, 630, and we needed to say 620/625. So none of the aspects of the ordinances were changed. We just had to change a couple of the numbering and to make sure that it was transparent and that we didn't ever get to the end and then someone say, wait a minute, this wasn't what went through the Planning Commission. We just brought it forward. So again, what you see before you is we're addressing the forms, the buffer yards, the landscaping, lots of record, the live work district for bulk regulations, looking at tree exemptions and buffer yards. So, same as last month.
Staff or commissioners have any questions of staff on this? Thank you. Does anyone from the audience like to comment on this? Seeing none, I need a motion for item 19.
To approve item 19.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item 19. Any discussion? All in favor signify by, of item 19, signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, same sign. Item 19 passes.
Move to adjourn. Second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed? Yes.